Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name's Helen, and the window next to me is Mia. We are the MCs of the online forum today. It gives us great pleasure and honor to welcome you all again to our collaborative global forum on the role of education in supporting students exploring future pathways, which is jointly organized with our collaborative Nottingham Trent University in the UK. We are very excited to meet all of you again online who are professionals, educators, and students from different parts of the world. Thank you all for making time in your busy schedules to join us here today, and a very warm welcome to you all. In this Global Forum series, we are honored to have invited a panel of international expert speakers from the UK, Australia, and Hong Kong to share and discuss the latest developments and innovative ideas about the role of higher education in supporting graduates of the future. The Global Forum series comprises 3 forums which explored innovative ways to prepare graduates of the future through applied research, practice, and supporting strategies. In Forum 1, Supporting Graduates of the Future, Research, Practice, and Strategies, we had focused on exploring key research, strategy, and practice in the United Kingdom and the Asia-Pacific region to help inform how we might prepare students to achieve and realize their individual aspirations after graduating. And in Forum 2, we shared on experience and practice sharing around pedagogies and working with students, exploring how we can integrate career readiness into students' curriculum and prepare them technically and also mentally for the diverse job market after graduating. Today is the 3rd and final forum of the series. For those who are interested in revisiting the topics covered in Forum 1 and 2, you may wish to visit our forum website by scanning the QR codes for the recordings. In today's forum, we'll focus on a topic, applied research related to supporting graduates for the future. You'll hear from our honorable keynote speakers in sharing about how their applied research work plays a key role to innovation that links research with subsequent advanced development in supporting graduates of the future. And after the speaker sharing, we'll have a live Q&A session. We encourage you to send your questions to the Q&A box below, which will be addressed by our speakers in the end.
As a way to express our gratitude and appreciation for our speakers' generous support, may I now invite Dr. Benjamin Chen Tat-Yun, Dean of Hong Kong Metropolitan University, Lee Ka-shing School of Professional and Continuing Education, Lee Pace, to present certificates of appreciation to our honorable speakers. May I first ask Dean Dr. Chen to present a certificate of appreciation to Professor Cecilia Chen, Professor in the Faculty of Education, Associate Director of Center for Enhancement of Teaching and Learning, the University of Hong Kong. Would Dr. Chen and Professor Cecilia Chen please look at the camera while we take a screenshot? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Chen.
Thank you. Next, may Dr. Chen please present a certificate of appreciation to Professor Julie Hu, Professor in Psychology Education, Department of Psychology, Nottingham Trent University, UK. Please smile at the camera. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Hu.
To mark this memorable event, we have also invited our Vice President, Research and Student Development, Professor Ricky Kwok from Hong Kong Metropolitan University to have a virtual group photo taken together. May we now invite Professor Kwok, our Dean Dr. Chen, Professor Cecilia Chen, Professor Julie Hu, and also our chairs of the organizing committee, Dr. Kathleen Jim from HKMU Lee Pace and Dr. Tako from Nottingham Trent University to join this virtual group photo taking. Now, would everyone please position yourself squarely in the frame and look directly at the camera for a few seconds. Ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. That's perfect. Thank you so much, everyone.
Now, I'm sure everyone is excited and looking forward to learning from our distinguished speakers. So on behalf of the organizing committee, let me invite our first keynote speaker, Professor Cecilia Chen, Professor, Faculty of Education, Associate Director, Center for Enhancement of Teaching and Learning, the University of Hong Kong. Professor Cecilia Chen has a dual discipline background with expertise in both engineering and education, particularly higher education. She plays a key role in enhancing engineering and science education, as well as teaching and learning in higher education. Her combined expertise in these fields has enabled her to lead and conduct research on topics such as assessment and feedback, experiential learning, technology-enhanced learning, and the development and assessment of 21st century skills, holistic competencies, from East to West. Professor Chen has been invited as a keynote speaker and panel speaker at many international conferences, including the Harvard Graduate School of Education. She holds a PhD in engineering from Trinity College and a postgraduate diploma and Master of Arts in Higher Education. She also holds a fellowship from King's College London and is a principal fellow of the Higher Education Academy. Professor Chen is involved in over 40 research projects with 5 general research funds awarded by the Education Panel. She received the University of Hong Kong Young Outstanding Researcher Award in 2014 to 15, and more recently, the Faculty Knowledge Exchange Award. She's the president of the Asian Society for Engineering Education and associate editor for both the Journal of Engineering Education and Studies in Educational Evaluation. Professor Chen has developed student-centered frameworks, instruments, and practical approaches to promote competencies development, and is a pioneer in the investigation of competencies assessment literacy. Her work is being employed around the world and also being adopted by software companies. She has received industry donations and university grants committee matching funds to support her work in this area, as she continues to work closely with organizations worldwide to promote holistic competencies development. So with a big round of applause, let's invite our first honorable speaker, Professor Cecilia Chen, to present on accrediting competency for future readiness. Professor Chen, please.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you very much. You guys can all hear me okay, yeah? So basically, first of all, thank you so much, right? I want to thank Metropolitan Nottingham Trent University for hosting this very important forum and inviting me here as a speaker. Well, first of all, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all, wherever you are joining us from. I know this is like a worldwide forum, so you could be joining us anywhere. Now, today's topic is about accrediting competence for future readiness. In the past few years, our life have evolved faster than ever. And there are questions that I want to ask right before we start. So I want to ask you, are your students future ready? Are they ready for more unexpected events? Are they ready to be replaced? Are they ready to accept new ideas in the new world? What can we do to ensure our students are future ready? I think these are some of the questions we really need to think about, right? As we go through all the different events, all the things that are happening the last while. Now, many researchers have predicted that in the next 5 to 10 years, 65% of the job that currently exists will be obsolete. Now, of course, with generative AI, ChatGPT, that could be even faster. I know that more new jobs will come up, but then what we are doing, are we teaching our students to be ready for this transformation? Of course, we as educators, we're not here just to help our students to land the best job. Right? We want to ensure that our students are ready to be for the society and for personal events as well. So what I want to mention is some questions that we want to address. Do employers want to see graduate students with holistic competence development? Now I call it holistic competence. Some people might call it employability, generic skills, 21st century skills. And another question is, do students want to be assessed for these generic skills development? And do universities have a systematic plan for holistic competence certification? And these are 3 questions I'm hoping that we might discuss about today in this forum. And of course, with all these changes, right, universities are finding difficult to sustain, because is the piece of paper, the degree, worth as much as we think these days? I think this is kind of something we need to think about. Now, I'm going to go directly to some of the findings I did. Okay, this one is actually not out yet. The actual publication is not out yet, but I'm just gathering some of the data to mention to you. It was a survey data, right? And we have almost about 400 employers. We do ask the employer, what do they want? Okay, most of them will mention that it's not the academic knowledge they care about, but these things. We're trying to find somebody that enjoys what they do. The enthusiasm will show itself, right? And the level of willingness that gotten any other way. Now, these are from the company around the world, and we actually have people from America, India, England, Ireland, Hong Kong, and so forth, and from big company as well. You can see here KPMG, Jardines, HSBC, Amazon, Standard Chartered, and so forth. They also mentioned they wanted to be able to express themselves. So communication is very important, but people want personality and that they have the drive and desire to join a company and add value to a culture. They want positive personality and character, and because they find that very rare. And integrity is actually one that is very, very hard to come up by these days as well. Graduates need to show creativity and willingness to take risk, and they want them to have curiosity. These are some of the main ones that I gather. But basically, they want generic skills. They want those generic skills. As I mentioned, I use the term called holistic competence. I think it's more fitting, right? Holistic competence is defined as an umbrella term for generic skills, teamwork, self-management, creativity, attitude like resilient, hardworking, and virtue, respect, honesty, and dignity. You will see these QR code through the PowerPoint, because if you take a picture of the QR code, you actually go to either the website or the publication I have, go directly to them. But the reason I think this term is more fitting, right? Because it's kind of stressed the importance of competence that a person needs to develop for him or herself, for friends or for family, for career or society during the lifetime. It's kind of lifelong learning. These competences go beyond different discipline, situation, and time. According to the Oxford Dictionary, holistic is characterized by the belief that the parts of the something are intimately interconnected. Okay, and of course, I think that as the world evolves, right, these set of competence will change. So at the moment, I have here these 12 competence, right, from leadership, problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, and teamwork, and so forth. But as we know, we're now also talking about AI literacy. Okay, AI literacy, where does this fit? So holistic competence in itself, it is not a set defined, because we are always trying to define stuff like what is in that box. But I think it doesn't do that anymore. It changed, it evolved depending the time we are in. I think Helen mentioned that I'm an engineer, right? So I came from an engineering background. So did some research in engineering. So from my years of research, I've gathered both quantitative and qualitative data from thousands and thousands of students, professors, and employers. And what I've concluded is that the type of engineers that our university have been producing is just like this guy. Okay, let me see. Okay.
Jarvis, drop my needle.
I'm going to fast forward it.
Come on. Let's go to you. I'm the best.
Well, we all know who that is, right? Basically, we want our engineer, our students, our graduates to be like that, so confident, so able, so capable, right? But the reality is we are producing engineers more like this. This is Dilbert. Dilbert is a stereotypical, technically minded single male. Dilbert is a skilled engineer. He's very good at what he does in engineering, but he has a poor social and romantic life. And I found that in Wikipedia, right? So it must be true. And this is some of the problem that we are coming across, right? Our students are able to do academically, right? However, when they need to apply to different scenario, they might have difficulty. Okay, and of course, they might have difficulty in terms of leadership, teamwork. Teamwork is always a big problem. okay? And so this is something that we as educator or university, policymaker need to think about. So despite voices from industry, despite the threat of industrial, revolution and AI, despite calling from society, we at university are still only doing very little to showcase, to access, and maybe providing evidence of competence. And this is what the employers and society need, because we also know that, right, in order for our students to kind of maybe give more thinking into this, we need them to be assessed. But let me talk about assessment in a short while. Challenges, right? So what are the challenges do we have in terms of developing generic skills in higher education? So I have this, this is done in 2017, right? It was a review of literature. And you can see there are lack of institutional and curriculum support, right? Because even in teaching and learning, although we are doing a lot more in teaching and learning, but there's always a little bit less support in that, right? And there's the operational challenges, exactly what does generic skills or what does holistic competence mean? How do we teach it? What are the pedagogy? What are the assessment? And of course, teacher and students' attitude and perception of development are very different. So in terms of the lack of institutional support, we have a lack of recognition, right? How important generic skills are. Lack of curriculum consideration and alignment. Some teachers do not know how to align these into our curriculum. So it's either an afterthought or extra curriculum, or it just doesn't exist. Then, of course, professional development itself is a difficulty. In terms of operational challenges, there's lack of clarity about the definition, okay, about conceptualization, no effective teaching pedagogy, difficulty in terms of assessing and measuring these competence. Teacher perception, student perception, just different. They're just different, okay? Now, most of you would know what this is, okay? Some of them are algebra, and then we have trigonometry, sine theta equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Again, as I mentioned, I'm an engineer, so I'm kind of bringing out the engineering part of me. But you would have done this in secondary school, probably as early as secondary 2 or something. But however, when you are doing this, right, you don't kind of complain. Student wouldn't complain and go, hey, why are we learning these sine theta, cos theta? Is it going to be useful for us, right? In fact, even as an engineer, you probably wouldn't even use it very often. You wouldn't go out to a normal person after the secondary, education. They wouldn't use it at all. They wouldn't go out to the supermarket and start going, hey, what is the measurement of cos theta in this, I don't know, shelves in the supermarket? Okay, it's not useful. However, when it comes to academic knowledge, we don't complain. We just learn it. We just go and learn whatever the teacher tell us. Okay, but when it comes to generic skills or holistic competence, we have a problem because we find it very difficult to tell students why we're learning that. Okay, that's from the teacher's point of view. Because even for the teacher, their mind shifting is basically saying, hey, we need to learn the academic knowledge, okay? And then for the student, it's like, well, if this is not really part of the learning outcome and it's not assessed, why should I learn it? So we have the difficulty of this. Now, I coined this called approach to develop. For those of you who are in teaching and learning, you will know about approach to learn. Okay, so Bake's approach to learn and Roy Sadler or process, right? So approach to learn for academic knowledge is to learn, and then you have surface and deep approaches. Okay, so if depending on the number of approach, right, you will be deep learning. Otherwise, it will be surface. Okay. However, for holistic competence, I argue that you don't learn it. You develop it, right? And I know I've talked to many scholars and they obviously agree with me because, for example, if you want to be a good leader, you can't just read a book. You can't learn it from a lecture. You have to give an opportunity to develop it. Either even just look at someone who is developing it, you will try and then you will imitate and then you will have a go of yourself, right? So, however, our students are either avoiding it or engaging it. Okay, so it's quite different. Some students can afford it altogether during the whole lifetime of university life. Okay, and because the reason is because a lot of these development are developed within outside curricula. So it could be developed in experiential learning, community service, or internship. And sometimes they just avoid from doing it. Okay, they rather do exam. Oh, I do want to mention one thing from actually surveying and the employers, right? We have some open question for the employers as well. They basically said they would prefer those who have done internship, who have done these extra community service, okay, than those who have shown no initiative of those. They prefer, because they know these competence can be developed by those. But then I think that's at the moment. If we as educators be a bit more creative, it can be somehow developed in classroom as well. Again, this is one of the publication I have in terms of student approach. Phil, I know Phil is asking, is it going to be slide available? Yes, I'm happy to share my slides as well. So there's no need to photocopy or take a screenshot of it. Okay. So. And then, of course, right, and comes to the assessment part. Do we actually assess it or not to assess it? That's the question I borrowed from Hamlet's Shakespeare. And I actually have a paper about that, to assess or not to assess. Now, this is the dilemma we have. If we, in some way, we know that if we don't assess, student doesn't take it as important, and teachers are the same as well. But if we assess absolutely everything, right? You know, we assess creativity, we assess critical thinking, teamwork, it becomes meaningless. Okay. And I give you an example. We have these students who went to in China to do experiential learning. Now, it was a voluntary course. It was, you know, it wasn't like they're not supposed to receive any grade or credit. However, we did give them an opportunity to go, well, if you do go, we could give you 1 credit, right? However, you have to do a 500-word reflection essay. They told me they'd rather not. They'd rather not to get the credit. They told me that the reason they're going is because it's very meaningful. What they're doing there is, you know, they learn a lot, and it's actually very enjoyable at the same time as well. So they'd rather not to be assessed and not to get that credit. And they do it again. They will go again and do it. So there are something that should not be assessed. And of course, there are something we need to assess, and we know that. And again, I did some research, right? And the sample size was quite big. It was like over 2,000 undergraduate and academic across 6 universities, okay? And we interviewed a number of academic and students as well. And basically, we recognize that it is extremely important to show evidence of holistic competence, right? The evidence of it, both in terms of showing the student for their employment in the future, but also for us in terms of quality assurance, okay? And they are somewhat positive about some kind of formal assessment of holistic competence, but they're against quantitative score, right? And they prefer some kind of qualitative record of their competence development. Okay, these are something, but at the same time, they have a very vague idea how to do it. Okay, they have not really a lot of idea on how to do that. This is something that we've been looking into in the past few years. So again, this is another paper that we have. So a lot of these papers are actually on my website, so you can go into it. We did a systematic review as well into how can we recognize these generic skills or holistic competence achievement. Okay, so there's a paper on that. Now, from the 3 questions I mentioned, right? Do employers want to see graduates holistic competence development? They do. Yes, they do. Do students want to be assessed for holistic competence development? Yes, they want. Okay, but however, the assessment can be a different thing. We need to think of assessment in a more innovative way. Okay. Do universities have a systematic plan for holistic competence certification? Now, we will, and this is what I want to mention about. Been working on this International Holistic Competence Foundation, okay? It's basically accrediting with employability competence, okay? And again, there's a QR code there. So we have many international partners. Okay, you can see there from UCL, Oxford, KTH, Hong Kong USC, and so forth, and of course Nottingham Trent, Doug, and no Doug for quite a long time actually, in fact. And so we have many international partners. So we are working towards having some kind of international recognition of these holistic competence. Now, so we allow basically course, right? Not program, a course. So you might have 40 courses in one program, but we allow one course, right? Or two courses, or how many number of courses to be accredited. So your curriculum design towards holistic competence will be recognized internationally, okay? Your course is accredited and is provide general evidence to showcase the quality of your course in holistic competence. So there'll be direct and indirect evidence. And then, well, you become a fellow, and then your university will be recognized because it becomes value added. And I think the value added of these generic skills is extremely important. I did have a few slides, but because it was too long, I actually cut it off, right? But basically, Google, Alibaba, they're all getting into the education industry. I know it is in a way, it is an industry, right? And their courses are guaranteeing jobs for them, right? And they're much shorter. They're 6 months or 1 year. And you can work in numerous international company like Google. Then you have Ernst & Young, right? Many years, actually, but 5 or 6 years ago, saying that, hey, having a degree is no longer necessary. We don't think that means success, okay? So you have international company coming out like that. So I'm coming back to that question. What is the value add of going to university? Now, to me, I think university, like I'm a mother of 3, okay? I want my student to go to university, not because I'm traditional mind. I want them to develop because I think university is a mini society, okay? I think they're still young, they have time. They go into university, learn how to work with each other, learn how to teamwork, learn how to socialize, learn about life. Okay, so to me, the academic side is important. Yes, I'm hoping at the end of it, they get a certificate, they get a transcript, they get a degree, right? But at the same time, I think it's most important for us like the educator to provide the opportunity for them to actually develop these competences, because that's what they need in the future, because they can then transform from one field to another, apply different things as well. Okay. Okay. So basically, I think all these are extremely important, and we have many international industrial partners, and we are still recruiting many community partners and many school and nonprofit organizations. Because what happens is when your course go through this process, right? It go through the committee. And the committee will make up of industrial partner internationally, community partner, and so forth. Because these are the people who actually have very good competence development. Okay, and so it's not just academic. Okay, because academic may not be the most suitable person to actually accredit these. And we are also in the middle of providing some kind of competence development transcript for students as well, because we want them to have something to show forth. Now, assessment in the future, and this is what I really want you to think about, right? Assessment in the future may not be the kind of assessment that you and I traditionally grew up with. The word assessment may mean something completely different, okay? Or a new term may need to coin for the type of assessment that is suitable for experiential learning or community, or basically holistic competence. Okay, this quote is actually from my book, Assessment for Experiential Learning. You can imagine experiential learning will be something of the future, right? Something that our students can really go out and develop and learn, come back in, find out more about academic knowledge, right? And then go out, and we provide the opportunity for them to go out and do the thing that they need to do, okay? And these are all very important. Now I have a video, and I'm about to finish, but I have a video to show you, okay? And I think it's quite meaningful. So hopefully I can play this. So that kind of conclude so I think in terms of that, right, I think that was a very meaningful video because it really kind of, sum up what I was trying to say. We are changing, we are really moving very fast, right? And there will be jobs displaced, replacement, but there will be new jobs coming out. Are we ready? Are we future ready? Okay. And that would mean there's a cultural shift, right? In terms of our mindsets, in terms of how we do things in university in order to help our students to be ready. So for education institutions around the world to truly achieve their mission and instill institutional learning outcome and holistic competence in their students, definitely cultural education shift is absolutely necessary. And here I am. Again, this QR code goes to my website, which have all the publications and information. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me and listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Cecilia Chen, for the inspiring and enlightening talk, Accrediting Competency for Future Readiness. We'll have a live Q&A session at the end, so we encourage you to send your questions to the Q&A box below. Our next keynote speaker of the day is Professor Julie Hume, Professor in Psychology Education, Department of Psychology, Nottingham Trent University, UK. Professor Julie Hume is a UK National Teaching Fellow and Principal Fellow of the Higher Education Academy. As a psychologist, she aims to make a difference within higher education through applying psychological theories to researching and enhancing inclusion within higher education settings. Professor Hume's work recognizes the importance of belonging to learning and teaching for both staff and students, and seeks to help both individuals and institutions to create learning environments which foster a sense of community and social engagement for everyone. In so doing, she seeks to develop students' employability and success in graduate employment. Her most recent research has focused on the experiences of disabled students at university, bullying in higher education, student transitions, and facilitating innovation as a way of promoting inclusion and teaching excellence. Professor Hume is an experienced university teacher, educational leader, and academic developer at Nottingham Trent University, UK. May I now invite Professor Julie Hume to present on belonging, being, and becoming, exploring possible selves through the transitions into, through, and beyond higher education. Professor Hume, please.
Hello, I'd like to begin by saying a massive thank you to Cecilia Chan, to Doug Cole, and for everyone involved in this global webinar series for inviting me to be involved and to give a talk here today. And a big welcome to all of you who are listening. So today I'm going to be talking about belonging, being, and becoming, and exploring possible selves through the transitions into, through, and beyond higher education. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about some of the work that I've done around transitions and how students experience transitions into university, what that can tell us about their transition through university, through the different levels of study, and then out of university into graduate employment. I'm going to think about that through a theoretical lens of being, belonging, and becoming, and also looking forwards to who might I become, exploring the concept of possible selves. So how can we help our students to imagine a future that's beyond their lived experience to the point at which they graduate? We're going to think a little bit about including diverse possible selves. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the disability research that I've conducted. And finally, think about the practical applications of these theories and these findings to look at how we can teach for graduate employability and prepare our students for an unknown future. So if you look around the literature on transitions, you'll find a lot of things in common across different studies from different researchers in different cultural contexts. There's a very strong emphasis on the idea of transitions as change. So moving from one context to another, for example, moving from school to university or moving from university into employment. And to some extent, that change is framed as a journey. But much of the literature on transitions focuses on the initial start at university. So that movement from school into university. And I would argue that we also experience transitions between levels. So from first year to second year of university, from second year to third year of university, and into postgraduate study or into employment afterwards. So although we can think about that initial entry point as being transitional, I would argue that students are constantly changing, and what's expected of them is changing throughout their entire university journey and beyond. And I think we can learn a lot from research into transitions that's been done to think about how we can equip students going forward for transitions out of university. The literature tends to focus on transition as a challenge. So when students start university, they leave home. They leave behind their family, their school friends, their neighborhood friends. They become more independent. They have to learn to cook for themselves and do all those other kind of domestic tasks, manage their finances, manage their time in ways that they perhaps previously haven't done. There's also a lot of change in the learning and teaching environment. So bigger classes, more anonymous teaching. They're one of many instead of being one of a small group. They're forming new friendships, new relationships with their peers and with their tutors. And there is an argument that students have what's been called an expectation versus reality gap. So their expectations of university can be very different from the reality that they experience when they arrive. And so they think they're prepared, and then it's not quite what they expected, and they have to learn to cope with a whole new set of circumstances that they weren't quite sure what to expect when they got there. The literature also tends to focus quite a lot on deficits. So the idea is that the student is unprepared for university, that they don't fit in, they're misfits, or that they're lacking important skills that are needed to navigate that university study. And so there's a lot of things about, what's wrong with the students. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because I think that's a problematic assumption. So back in 2014, I worked with Janet de Wilde at the Higher Education Academy, as it was then, now the Advanced HE. And we carried out a project called Tackling Transitions in STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and maths disciplines. So we ran a huge series of workshops. We had 381 participants in total. This included school students, university students, teachers from schools, university staff, publishers, exam boards, all sorts of different people. And we brought them together to talk about what they saw as the issues surrounding transition into university. And one of the main things that was highlighted was this idea of students having a skills and knowledge gap, that they weren't ready to think like for example, to think like an engineer, to think like a psychologist, to think like a scientist or a historian. And this was a particular skill set that was associated with the discipline. And so these pre-university qualifications, A-levels here in England, for example, were seen as poor preparation for university. On reflection now, I wonder, to what extent pre-university qualifications are intended to prepare students for university. And I think, there's a responsibility on us as university staff to support students to begin to think like a astronomer, engineer, historian, whoever they might be. Our participants talked about a lack of explicit signposting, so making the unknown known. If students don't know what university is like, we should be telling them what university is like before they get here, and that would help to prepare them. The idea of anonymity and class sizes was a repeated comment from our participants. So in particular, in disciplines where there were large numbers of students, maybe 300 students in a class, that the individual student could feel lost and not be seen or not know their tutor, and their tutor wouldn't know them. And there was discussion of tensions between the sectors, that the pre-university environment, those teachers, those students needed to be able to talk to people from universities to understand what would be different about the teaching styles, to help share understanding across the sectors, to inform collaboration and cooperation between schools and universities, and share resources and research. And students themselves were actually really keen to support this and to be engaged with working with students across the different sectors. However, there seemed to me to be a bit of a problem with some of this, in that we're thinking of students entering a system and kind of almost like a conveyor belt. They're just moving through the system step by step, and we should be telling them all to have a uniform experience. And a subsequent piece of research with Andrew Holliman, myself, and Kevin Wilson-Smith, we started to think about the series of transitions that we make throughout a career. And so we started with thinking about adaptability and resilience in undergraduate students, and the fact that you can do things with students to help them to learn to become more adaptable. And that more adaptability helps their engagement and helps their success at university. We reported research that suggests that a transition is all about spending a challenging time in a novel environment, and that you must be prepared for it. And we can think about that in terms of each stage of the student life cycle, coming into university all the way through, out of university into employability. And transition from undergraduate student to PhD student to early career researcher, and really a reflection that what makes the difference for everyone is working in a supportive environment, that having colleagues, tutors, students who are kind to us, supportive of us, actually provides a buffer that supports our well-being, that helps us to cope with the challenges and stresses that we might face during a transitional experience. And so thinking about how we create that kind of level of support, social support for our students as we prepare them for graduation, is something that I think we can be thinking about as we move forward. And so there was a really important kind of concept for me here, that transitions, although individual students go through transitions happen in a social context. They're not done in isolation. We don't navigate a transition, a change in our lives of any type alone. We have a social environment around us, and what that social environment is like makes a big difference to our transitional experience. And I love this quote from Gale and Parker back in 2014, when they talk about taken for granted notions of transition, those ideas about, it's challenging, it's stressful, everybody's going through a difficult time at a point of transition. And the normative and universal discourses of transition do not capture the diversity of student lives, their experiences of university, or of universities themselves. And for me, this theoretical model from Bronfenbrenner, the ecological systems theory back in '92, really helps to sort of encapsulate that. So as individuals, we are different, we are diverse. I am unique and you are unique. And how we experience the social systems around us, our family relationships, our friendships, our school relationships, our local community, and our kind of interaction with community systems and structures, the departments in which we study, for example, and even the bigger social, cultural, and historical issues, the political system in which we live, the wider culture in which we live, shapes who we are, and we shape it. And so my experience of starting university or starting a new job would be very different from your experience of starting at the same university or starting the same job And when we start thinking about those diverse individuals starting different universities, which are not all the same, and different jobs, then it becomes very difficult to make generalized conclusions about how that works and what that experience is like. And so with a colleague, Naomi Winston, and I'll share the reference with you for that in a few minutes, we started to think about this idea of transitions as being transformative. And this quote from Eccleston et al. In 2010 seemed very important to us. Transitions can lead to profound change and be an impetus for new learning, or they can be unsettling, difficult, and unproductive. And we've all had those different experiences. We've started a new thing and found it exciting and found that we're developing and growing in that new environment, or that we're stressed and we don't quite know what to expect and oh my goodness, what's going to happen next? But while certain transitions are unsettling and difficult for some people, risk, challenge, and even difficulty might also be important factors in successful transitions for others. So the idea is that to some extent, going through difficulty is a refining process, a transformational process that can change us and help us to grow. And that, a little bit like the growing pains we experience as children as we get bigger, it can be difficult and yet we can be developing through that. And Mayer and Land talk about transition as navigating threshold concepts, the idea that that uncertainty is transformational. And so the image on the slide, we're standing in a darkened room and a door is open. And as we step across that threshold into the uncertain, bright future, we don't know what's going to happen. And that can be a brave decision. It takes courage and confidence. But there are opportunities for change and growth that can be exciting on the other side. But the actual process might be a little bit painful. And so in the UK, we talk about a metaphor of if we adapt to something very well, something new, then we take to it like a duck to water. And if you take a little baby duck, a duckling, and set it loose on a pond, you'll see it swim away very confidently, even if it's never seen water before. It is hatched from its egg knowing how to swim. On the other hand, if we're uncomfortable with something, we talk about feeling like a fish out of water. And if you take a fish out of its pond, you'll watch it gasping and struggling and flapping about and desperately distressed and needing to get back into the water. And so we started to think about this idea of transition as not knowing whether we had a duck or a fish almost, which when we put a student into the pond, was it going to be like a duck to water? Was it going to swim off confidently? Was that student going to be happy and successful and thrive in that new environment? Or was it like taking a fish out of water into an unfamiliar environment where they would struggle and be stressed and distressed? And we know from the statistics that certain groups of students are more likely to find university more challenging, that they may succeed maybe less, they may underachieve at university, and that those groups include, for example, lower socioeconomic status students, students from ethnic minority groups, students who come from families where nobody previously has been to university. And so a lot of assumptions get made about having targeted interventions for these particular groups. But that can be problematic because actually the diversity of those students can also be an asset for them. And so what we were interested in finding out was why it was that some students from a disadvantaged background might really thrive at university, and some students from more privileged backgrounds who are maybe more suited to going to university on paper may still have a difficult time. And what we realized, Naomi and I, was that there were two types of knowledge about universities. Knowledge about university is all the things that if you haven't been to university, you hear from others. And so if you come from a family where lots of people go to university, you'll have heard of lots of different experience. Your big brother went to this university, had this experience, has this advice for you. Your mum went to a different university and she had this experience, she has this advice. Your friends, your peer group, all have advice for you, and you gain lots of knowledge about university, but maybe not about the university that you're going to, and maybe not about the experience that you're going to have as a unique individual. However, knowledge of university is missing for everybody. And so no matter how much you hear about university before you go, if you're lucky to hear lots of advice from your friends and family in your social group, then you still don't have that knowledge of university, that understanding of what it's like to be immersed in that university culture and to live there and to study there and to mix with the group of people that you meet. So knowledge of university is missing for everybody, and that can explain why it is that students who apparently have all of the benefits and advantages when they start can still find that university transition difficult. And so we may be able to say that there's predictive value to some of these demographic group memberships, but there are no certainties. All students may be at risk. And so all students may take to university like a duck to water, or they may take to university and find it a difficult experience like a fish out of water. And so Naomi and I wrote a book chapter looking at a study that we collaborated on. And we argue that problematizing transitions isn't a helpful approach. Telling all students, you're going to go to university, it's going to be really difficult, you're going to find it a challenge, is not a helpful way to go, because for some of them, it won't be a challenge. And they can actually spend their time wondering why on earth they're not struggling. What are they missing? What didn't they get? And transition can be exciting, and it can be transformational, and it can be both challenging and transformational and exciting. And so what we wanted to do was to capture the student experience from them themselves, rather than making assumptions about what we thought might be happening. So what could we do to facilitate successful transitions? So we conducted a survey, which included some quantitative measures, a Likert scale, and some open questions to collect their thoughts. And what we found in the quantitative part of the survey was that students, we measured their confidence in certain skills at the beginning of their first year of study, and again at the end of their first year of study. And we were really looking at, how the confidence in skills changes. And you might expect that at the beginning of the year, you're not very confident in something, and then you practice it through the year, and at the end of the year, you're more confident because you've had a year's practice. But actually, that's not what we found. And what we found was that students came in with some skills slightly less confident, but then through the year, they got more confident. So for example, they got more confident in searching for academic sources. So being able to do a literature search and find relevant reading through literature databases and things like that. They got more confident in that, and that makes sense because they wouldn't have had to have done it at school, but they will do it at university and they'll get lots of practice. They got more confident in, for example, note-taking. So at school, perhaps certainly in the UK, they don't have to take notes so much in class, and when they go to university, it's a skill that they need to use in order to capture their thinking during a lecture. And so they get more confident with note-taking. However, some skills, they get less confident. And that included things like maintaining attention, maintaining attendance, keeping up with reading. And what we realized was that students, before they come to university, very often don't know whether or not they can manage themselves and complete these sorts of tasks. So for example, when you're at school and your parents make sure you're awake in the morning and they send you off to school, of course you have 100% attendance. So you come in confident that you can attend university. That's not a problem. You've got 100% attendance record. But when you're at university and you have to wake yourself up, be organized, remember that you've got classes, all of those things can actually make it much harder than you realized it was going to be. And the same with keeping up with reading. There's a sort of self-regulation behavior here in having to make sure that you stay on top of it. You don't procrastinate and put it off till tomorrow. And so actually what we realized is that there is an expectation reality gap, that students expect to be able to cope with certain things and then find it much harder than they realized. And I think extrapolating from this, we can probably make the assumption that the same is true about that unknown environment of the world of work. We also talked to them about their experiences of transition and asked them some open questions. So they gave us fuller text responses. And we asked them about their previous transition from school up to the age of 16 to sixth form at the age of 8, from 16 to 18. And they commented that there'd been a shift to more independent learning in making that move, that the workload had increased and the work had got more difficult. And they said that actually they realized that these were the same things that had happened when they made the transition to university. And so in moving to university, the work got harder, it was more independent, and there was more of it. Now at school, of course, they move quite often with their friends into sixth form, and when they go to university, they lose that social support. So we come back to this idea of social support and peer support being really important potentially. But the important message here is that students recognized that they had gone through multiple transitions before in their lives and that they had learned lessons about themselves and what they could cope with, that they had made a transition, it had all worked out okay, and they could do that again in coming to university. And I would suggest that in going into graduate employment, they've made lots more transitions and they can reflect on that and think about what they've learned about themselves. And so Naomi and I concluded that actually there is a real value in reflecting on your transitional experiences through life, and that it may be more helpful to think about your own experiences of transition than it is to hear from a university or from a graduate employer, oh, if you do this, you'll be fine. If you do that, you'll be fine. Because that's giving knowledge about, but it's not giving that knowledge of. Knowledge of yourself can be really powerful and empowering in making these transitions. We also realised that students actually are fantastic supporters of each other, and in sharing their stories and mentoring each other, they can actually be really helpful in supporting other students to make transitions. And so in terms of graduate employment, having recent graduates mentoring late stage university students to think about how they're going to cope with going to work could actually be really helpful. And narrative testimonials, so having students telling stories to each other, maybe capturing that on a video, and the students can watch that and kind of take away what's relevant to them. And so working with students, not just kind of relying on staff. If you're like me, it's a long time since I graduated. I think I remember, but I probably don't remember it quite accurately. And so actually having current students and students who've recently graduated telling their stories can be much more helpful and much more relevant to the students that we're trying to support through transition right now. Also thinking about the fact that transitions is a continuing process and we can all learn from that. So yeah, I've just started a new job and it was really helpful to me to think about some of the transitions that I've been through beforehand and think about how I could use that learning to support me in my new role. And then thinking about these systemic issues, thinking about the social environment into which we are transitioning and how our social identity functions within the new groups that we're joining so that we can develop that social support. And so how can we support socially? How can we create those social connections that support our students? Well, Jackie Cranny and I published a book chapter a while ago where we talk about the importance of curriculum for this, that students Some students may only engage with us through their classroom and their assessment experiences, and that actually having group work early in the degree programme really helps to build those peer connections, those peer relationships, and so helps students to be supported and feel like they belong. And also having material that is meaningful and personally relevant to the students. So showing students the real world implications and applications of what they're learning, so that students can actually talk about, oh yes, when that happened to me, it was like this. And you can then formalize that learning. And so I did this in a module called Psychology and Education, where I was teaching students about what makes good learning. And these students were going to be teachers, they were going to be educational psychologists. And we talked about how school had been for them. And there was a large group of international students. So they were able to talk about what it was like to go to school in China or in Europe or in the UK. And then they brought these different understandings of what school was like. And we were able to work from that to think about how do we support students moving into different contexts. And then I could make it more formal, more academic, but they started where they were. And it means that everyone can bring a perspective and everyone feels valued within that group. So then we move on to Mian and Howell's work around belonging and becoming and being. So being is about who am I? Becoming is about who will I be? And belonging is about how I fit in. And of course, we all want to fit in. So belonging is very much a complex concept. It's about how our environment fits with our individuality, how we connect with that environment and the people around us. It's linked to our belongingness to our subject. So feeling like I'm a psychologist or feeling like you're an engineer or whatever. And it's also about self-awareness, knowing what strengths and weaknesses we bring. And I refer back there to Ian Wilson's talk a little while ago on reflection for employability. So we're thinking about who we are, how we fit with the social groups around us, and then thinking about who we're going to become. And when we think about who we become, I like to refer to this idea from Marcus and Nurius. There is more recent research from them that looks at this idea of possible selves, but this quote for me really sums it up. Possible selves represent individuals' ideas of what they might become, what they would like to become, what they're afraid of becoming, and thus provide a conceptual link between cognition and motivation. So we think about the ideas that we see around us, whether that appeals to us, whether we're motivated to pursue that as a possibility, or whether we think that we may not want to go a particular way. And the image there is of a young child imagining all the things that they might be when they grow up. So will they be a doctor? Will they be a teacher? Will they be an astronaut? Will they be an engineer? Will they be a chef? And of course, these ideas of what they can become come from the people that they see around them. So if they see someone who is a teacher being very successful and happy and having a meaningful life, that career will appeal to them and they may be motivated to pursue that. But we can only imagine ourselves in the roles that we know exist and where we can see other people doing those roles. So if you think about that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'd like to introduce you to my grandson, Nathaniel, who was 3 at the time that this photo was taken. And he was graduating from nursery school, so preschool, and starting to go to primary school for the very first time. And they graduated from nursery school. And this is him in his little graduation outfit. And at the graduation ceremony, as he crossed the stage as a successful graduate of nursery school, he was asked what he wanted to be when he grew up. And his answer was that he wanted to be Lightning McQueen from Disney Cars. That was his world. He absolutely loved the Disney Cars films. And of course, that's not a realistic goal for him. He doesn't know that he can never be a cartoon car. He does now. He doesn't want to be Lightning McQueen anymore. But he was looking around him at the world that he knew, and that was what he saw. What we want to be when we grow up is very much constrained by what we see around us. Nathaniel saw Disney cars and Lightning McQueen. That's what he wanted to be. Do we see role models, real people who look like us, think like us, have the same characteristics as us, doing the things that we want to do, or presenting examples of what we might want to do? Or are we very restricted because of the lives that we've lived and we don't know all of the opportunities that are available to us? And I would argue that that's the case. So who we want to be, our possible selves that we can envision, is constrained by the role models that we know, the cultural context in which we live. Maybe in some cultures, certain people of certain genders cannot take a specific role. Is that okay? You know, can we expand people's opportunities and ideas of what their possible selves might be? And also by our self-knowledge, whether that's accurate or not. So again, supporting reflection to help us to have an accurate understanding of who we are, of our strengths, what we bring that could actually contribute to becoming that possible self is a really helpful way to go. And the messages that we send to our students in this context are really important. So this is some research that I did with a disabled student researcher, Pippa Hamilton, a few years ago, and my PhD student, Emma Harrison. And we did a qualitative study with around 60 disabled students, 67 disabled students. And we talked to them about all sorts of aspects of their higher education experience. But one particular angle that we looked at was employability. And students gave us these quotes. "I feel as though I am looked at as less than the other students, even if this isn't true. Only 3% of qualified English lawyers have a disability, as the profession is so inaccessible. So that is also over my head." And then another student, "At interview, I was told we don't want to give a place to someone with your type of disability because you might not be able to do the work post-qualification." And so the message here from these universities is you cannot. This is not for you because of a characteristic. Now that characteristic could be anything. It could be age, it could be gender, it could be disability, it could be ethnicity, it could be absolutely anything. But I would argue we need to turn that on its head and say, if only 3% of qualified English lawyers have a disability, is that because the universities are telling them that there's no point in them qualifying, so they don't pursue the discipline at all of law? And also 3% of qualified English lawyers are disabled. And so those lawyers are perfect role models for disabled students, and we should be bringing them into our classrooms and saying, look at what is possible. Here is your possible future self. Come and meet this person and find out what it's like to be a disabled lawyer. And that way we increase the diversity in our professional workforce. We also support our students, inspire them, and help them to develop their own aspirations and skills. We give them role models to work towards. And so for me, there are several implications of all of this work. First of all, I think we need to reflect on who students meet in their curriculum. And that can be through work experience like formal placement, but it's also through who are their teaching staff. Do they see people like them on the teaching staff? Employer engagement, bringing in employers into our classroom to meet our students, to inform their curriculum, to inform their assessment, and having diverse employers that they can meet who might be like them so that they sometimes see themselves. Their peers and their slightly more advanced peers. So thinking about bringing in recent graduates who graduated maybe 1 or 2 years ago to talk to current students who are maybe in their final year and say, look, I'm only a year or two down the line from you. I still remember what it's like to be you. Here's what I think. This is what it's like. This is what you can do. It's easier to aspire a short distance in the future than it is to aspire to be some super chief exec of a major multinational corporation. So getting them to meet people who they can relate to. I'm thinking about our reading lists, the authors of books and journal articles that we encourage our students to read. Can they see themselves in that author list? And I think that's really important. So diversity, I think, needs to be visibly represented if we want our students our diverse students to be empowered to aspire to ambitious possible selves, if we want to raise their aspirations. But also within the curriculum, students need safe opportunities to try out their skills and their fit with different careers. How do I know if I want to be an astronaut if I've never had the opportunity to see what it's like to work in an environment with no gravity? How do I know if I want to be a forensic psychologist if I've never set foot in a prison and I don't understand what the job is all about? So doing things like having active learning opportunities in the classroom where they try out safely the skills that they've got to solve problems that real employers are facing. Authentic assessment, where they're actually learning, they're doing assessments that are set by employers to solve real world problems, and encouraging their reflection and their personal development within this. Where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? How can I use this feedback to get better at this thing that I really need to be good at if I want that career? And so we need to empower our students. They need to be able to see their own potential. And then we need to be able to help motivate them to work towards that positive future. And I leave you with that question. How do we do that? How do you do that? Thank you very much for your attention.
Professor Hu, thank you very much for sharing your professional knowledge and expertise with us. Now we will have 15 minutes live Q&A session. We encourage you to send your questions to our Q&A box below. Now, it is our great pleasure to invite back our organizing committee to chair Dr. Doug Ko, Deputy Director of Employability Services, Nottingham-Trent University, UK, to lead this Q&A session with our amazing keynote speakers. I'm sure our participants are looking forward to the discussion and idea exchanges. Dr. Ko, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, so again, big thank you for everyone for joining today, and apologies there for the technical issues. But what we're going to hopefully do is ask Julie to record that talk again when the sound is clear, and then we can share that with participants in the future, because there was so much value in there. So apologies, Julie, but I think that's a workaround, and it's never any harm practicing these things more than once, right? So so just wanted to jump into the Q&A. So Julie, have you had a chance to try and log in and log back out? Brett, do you want to try just testing your mic just to see if it works?
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh no, that works perfectly. Thanks, Julie. And apologies, we didn't want to stop you mid-flow, but hopefully in the Q&A we can start to explore some of this. So I've got a couple of questions for both of you actually, and it'll be interesting to get your perspective. So I think many of us will agree that these are really important areas of work. And I really, Cecilia, you talked about the need for a cultural shift. And I think in both areas, how do we do this work at scale, I suppose, and how do you get that cultural shift? So it's relatively straightforward to test these in small pilots and in small areas and get that kind of buy-in. But how do we get institutional leaders to buy into this kind of thinking? And I think that's a question that I'd be curious for both of you to hear your views.
If you don't mind, I will start first. Is that okay? Yeah. And is it exactly what you are asking? We are trying to put together that, international holistic competence and accreditation. We know there's no way around it, right? We need some kind of assessment, as I mentioned, and we need some kind of evidence. But we have great teachers. We do. Some of the teachers are brilliant, and they don't mind taking the time to go and develop different program or extra program. But then there's only so far they can go before they can really change the mindset of people and everyone, right? So, we need everybody to help. We need partners, right? We need international partners to work together and join hands and saying, hey, look, this is now important. To be honest, right? And my mind is really all about generative AI lately, okay? Because we're doing policy and support. But I can see, that if we don't change, we don't start transitioning, we are going to be somehow obsolete, replaced in a way. And I actually did a research, right? And this is about, our teacher going to be replaced by generative AI, because we know that it can be done a lot, right? And funny enough, right, the students these days, which are Gen Z students, brought up with computer, laptop, any digital device. They told us that, no, I don't think so. I think teachers are really important. And they told us a number of reasons, and they all to do with humanity and generic skills, you know. And I thought, wow, that's actually really true, right? So so I kind of pulled together like kind of a table, what we need to prepare ourselves as teacher, that, you know, to bring out that, you know, that relationship building with the students. And that is something that you cannot ask an AI machine to do, right? And so between that and basically changing the student, the teachers, the policymaker, the mindset that, hey, look, you know, if we keep doing the way we are doing, it's not going to work. Okay. And now we have all these catalysts to tell us, hey, you better start changing. And with this international accreditation, and I'm hoping that that would also bring us together and work together. That's basically my answer.
No, thank you, Steve. I'm in. I think it's absolutely important. I think both this session, with both of your work and the research that both of you publish, having that evidence is absolutely crucial part of this. So no, I 100% agree. Julie, did you want to come in on any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, Cecilia, you know, your talk was fantastic, and I referenced you several times through my talk and nobody heard. But you know, I think you're right that the humanity of teaching is so important, and that what we're providing for our students alongside those skills and competencies that you articulated so beautifully are role models. And I think that matters a lot to students, that they can see who they might become in their teaching staff, as well as other students, graduates, employers, etc. As for convincing university leadership, Doug, I think that to some extent that battle is won. So many university leaders now want to see us developing our students in terms of their skills, competencies, employability, because they know that the university reputation succeeds when its graduates succeed. And I think that's the message that they need to hear. And I think that there's also pressure, growing pressure internationally from those big employing organizations like Google, who are saying to universities, we need graduates who are better prepared for employment, who have the skills, the creativity, the positivity, the confidence to come and work for us. And you know, that's really important. And I think if universities don't change, this is the hard reality of it, if we don't change and we don't keep up with this changing world, then actually we will become obsolete. And no vice chancellor wants to see their university close because students won't come because they're not going to get a job at the end of it. So I think actually there is a desire to do this. I think what's missing at the moment for some universities is a real understanding of practically how to do that. And I think the answer is easier than many of us see. I think many academics have grown up as students. You know, they've been a student and they've gone straight into an academic career and they've learned to be researchers, and they haven't experienced the world of employment outside universities. And I think by bringing in employers to work alongside academics to inform those future-proofed skills that we want to develop, that actually academics will learn from those employers too about what's required, and they will grow in confidence. So I think there's a real piece of work to do about upskilling our academics and about developing our own confidence to deliver these skills to students and to support this. But I think it's about thinking about where at curriculum level we can bring in those opportunities. And I think a real opportunity is around assessment. If we can create assessments that come from the world of employment, if employers can be saying to us, we're trying to solve this problem right now, how would your students solve it? And we can give students opportunities to practice solving those sorts of problems at university, then they are prepared and they are ready to go into the workplace.
No, absolutely. Some really, really great points. Yeah, authentic assessment, absolutely key. Interesting, gets me thinking about CIPD, which is like the national body for human resources in the UK, and where they were talking about they talked about the future of work is human, and they were talking about that several years ago. So I would argue that a lot of the world is constantly changing. When I studied and graduated in 1993, I never had any idea what jobs were out there either, and jobs have got, so this change, this complexity is a constant. But I think, Cecilia, the point you made, that differentiating who we are as humans and those qualities is absolutely kind of crucial. So just kind of moving on to, there's a couple of questions coming in, so I'm trying to read those, and I thank you for responding to those in the chat. Feel free, both of the speakers here, to respond to them in the chat if you can. One part I want to pick up on Julie as well. I want to give Julie a chance to talk whilst her microphone is working as well this time. But it applies to both of you. With both areas of work, I think we need to be brave to allow students to fail and learn from their mistakes. But I'm not sure that people are that, and leaders are, you know, when we have kind of summative assessment, that we're how comfortable we are with that. So I just kind of wondered what your thoughts were on how we might grow that or develop that, and be bold to take that step to allow students to fail, to learn from their mistakes, and to grow, particularly in relation to all those holistic competencies as well, Cecilia. Those things are not one-off, like you get it or you don't get it. It's a spectrum there. So how do we support that journey?
We learn through practice, don't we? And I think this is where, you know, John Biggs's ideas around constructive alignment really matter. If we want to develop our students to have those holistic competencies, then actually we need learning outcomes that say that students will develop them. We need then to give them opportunities to practice within the curriculum, and we need to teach what those are and to give feedback. And then we need to assess them, and we need to make sure that they're actually built into our courses, not that we're just building in the knowledge about these things, but the how-to practical skills. And I think, you know, we often over-assess, and we underutilize formative assessment. So we make everything high stakes at university. Certainly in the UK, students have, you know, relatively few opportunities to have a go at something and to see how it works, and then to reflect on how they can get better and get some feedback on that. So I think it's about making teaching, for me, very much more interactive, hands-on, you know, using lab spaces and seminar spaces for students to actually try out their skills in a way that isn't assessed, but they get feedback from their teachers, they get feedback from their colleagues, and maybe even from potential employers who may be invited into the classroom, and that they're continually developing, rather than, you know, you get introduced to an idea and then you get some teaching that's all about content, and then you get assessed on something practical. We can't do that. We have to build it into our teaching styles. And I think, you know, the new technologies that we have available to us make that so much easier. You know, even if we're teaching online, we can do practical work, explore ideas, discuss ideas, get students working in teams and in groups, building those relationships as well that are so important to belonging, and practicing those skills. So for me, it's about constructive alignment that focuses on those skills, not just on content.
Thank you, I totally agree. Thank you, Julie. Cecilia, did you want to add to that?
I think feedback is important. And this is something that we, I suppose we always talk about academic knowledge feedback, and we don't give enough, and, you know, the student doesn't understand, it's like feedback graveyard. But what about feedback in holistic competence, right? And what Deacon Joanna Tai mentioned about is evaluative judgment. How students would learn about themselves and able to, you know, basically somehow provide feedback to themselves, like self-feedback. Okay, I think that's important as well, because when they go into industry, they won't know, right, if they're wrong and right, because there are no teachers there. There's no one going to tell them, hey, yeah, you did right, you did wrong, right? So we need to somehow teach them, right, to able to feed themselves back. Hey, you know, for example, if they work with teams, right, why would they, you know, they might come across and people don't want to work with them, or they might come across people who are not good to work with. How do you deal with that? Right. So I think this is, you know, it's back to kind of like trial and error, because nobody knows, every single person is different. Right. So, but at the same time, they need to realize that, yeah, you know, this way doesn't work, maybe another way, but somehow feedback. And again, we need to provide this opportunity for feedback. it might not be from us. We may not be, as teacher, we may not be the best people to provide this feedback. It might be their own peers, it might be mentor, and it might be industrials. Yeah.
No, that's super helpful. And this links into, we've had a question come in from the participants as well, and one of our colleagues in Confetti around developing resilience. Apologies, Amelia, I know I haven't come back to you with solutions here. So really appreciate Cecilia offering some suggestions on how, for example, we might develop resilience in our students. But I think there are some principles there that you both outlined in terms of practice, learning from mistakes, and feedback. And actually that to develop resilience, you need to have all of those things in place to give that. And this is what links to the work by Ian Wilson with his model of reflective practice in the previous seminar, which is worth revisiting, where it's talking about reflective practice over time and repeating. So not single incidences of reflective practice. They reflect on one assignment and then that's it. Having multiple reflection points, that is all about, again, lifelong learning too, and how do we encourage that? So I think there's no easy solutions, but definitely I think this group that you're pulling together, Cecilia, with this project will hopefully provide a lot of answers in practice, which I know a lot of people are crying out for, is how do we do it? People are busy and they want to know, how do we do this in the classroom? How do we actually address that? I think we've got like 1 more minute, I think, for a question. One more question I want to kind of throw out to you, and again, would welcome both your thoughts on this. In terms of the holistic competencies, and you look across that group of them, and thinking more broadly as well, Julie, in terms of the kind of qualities we want to see in our students, have you got any thoughts on the kind of hierarchy or a ranking of them? Is anything coming back from employers to kind of to give you a thought that actually these are all important, but maybe this one is the most important? Or is there any kind of view around which, is there any kind of weighting that you might feel around some of these human qualities that we're encouraging that is coming forward?
Right, I did a survey. I can't remember in the top of my mind, but there were about 400 employers, right? And we did ask them to weight it, but I can't remember in the top of my head. And it was about 2 years ago. Things might have changed since then as well. You know, it's so fluid, like so dynamic. Yeah. Yeah.
Julie, do you want to come in or?
Yeah, so I have a PhD student working on this a little bit at Keele. And one of the things that he's seeing are adaptability, agility, the ability to deal with change. And I think everything that we've talked about in terms of transitions and transitions into graduate employment relates to that idea that I learn that I can cope when the world changes around me, and I have the confidence that my skills are sufficient. So I don't think it's as much about the skills. The skills are important, but I think there's something about an attitude, a positive attitude, as Cecilia was saying, that, you know, I can stop and think and be creative about how do I overcome this brand new problem that I've never met before.
I think you're absolutely right, Julie. I would put forward a suggestion that we can't do any of that if the student isn't able to reflect effectively. So for me, that ability to reflect effectively underpins it all. If we can't recognize those opportunities, how we're doing that on that learning from mistakes, if we can't reflect properly, I think that it all falls down. And so for me, that's always a helpful starting point. But listen, massive thanks to both of you. It's super. This hopefully the starts of the conversations. This forum series is about starting up conversations, connecting people, hopefully, and building on that. So let's keep the conversations going. Huge thanks to both of the speakers again. And like I said, Julie, we will resolve that technical issue one way or the other. So participants, that talk will be coming to you, I'm sure, loud and clear in the future. I will record a video
for you.
Thanks so much, Julie. Right, I think I've kept things to time, so I'm going to step out at this point.
Thank you so much, Professor Chan and Professor Hume, Cecilia and Julie, for addressing our participants' questions. And thank you, Doug, for leading the Q&A session. So I'm sure our participants find today's forum interesting and inspiring. And sorry about the technical problems earlier. So before closing our forum series, on behalf of my topic editors, which includes Dr. Ko as well, I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to promote our research topic with Frontiers in Education, which has recently been released. And we like to invite educators, whether you're an academic, a researcher, an administrator, or leader, to make a submission to share with us your insights and innovative ideas about how we can better nurture students
inherent qualities and characteristics, or as Cecilia mentioned, the holistic competencies, or as Julie mentioned, the humanity, to meet the demand and challenges of the future world. So we would like this special issue to serve as a parallel extension to our collaborative Global Forum series and to bridge the gap between knowledge and practice in preparing students for the future. And so please consider submitting an abstract or a manuscript up to the final deadline of the 30th of September. And as we publish on a rolling basis, you're welcome to submit your final manuscript before the deadline. So we welcome in particular empirical research, perspective, opinion, and curriculum instruction and pedagogy. And you can see the word limits on screen. So all accepted manuscripts will be published online. For more details about our research topic, you can scan the QR code on screen, or do feel free to drop myself or Doug an email. We are happy to discuss and work with you. So thank you so much for your attention and interest in advance, and we look forward to your contributions and being inspired by your insights and experiences. Thank you so much, everyone.
To close our collaborative Global Forum series, it is our honor to invite back our Vice President, Research and Student Development, Professor Ricky Kwok from Hong Kong Metropolitan University to give his closing remarks. Let's put our hands together to welcome Professor Ricky Kwok. Professor Kwok, please.
Dean Dr. Benjamin Chen, Professor Cecilia Chan, Professor Julie Hermy, distinguished guests, delegates, colleagues, and friends. Today, we have come together virtually again to reaffirm our commitment to broaden our perspectives and experiences in supporting our students and graduates in a post-COVID era. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you all for your time, interest, and support for our Global Forum series to make it a successful event. As I mentioned in my opening remarks a few weeks ago, I believe, students today are facing a very different world, and higher education institutions have a much tougher job than ever to prepare graduates for not only the workplace, but also to have the flexibility to move across jobs and sectors, continuously develop themselves to stay relevant, achieve and realize their individual aspirations, and embrace lifelong learning to thrive in all aspects of life. One of the aims of our Global Forum series is for us as educators, administrators, and leaders to step back and think critically and analytically about the issue of graduate employability and their future readiness. By bringing together our honorable expert speakers and participants from around the world to engage in this virtual space, it is my utmost hope that our Global Forum series will help to contribute to and extend this increasingly important global dialogue, whether from an academic, applied research, administrative, or leadership perspective. After the 3 forums, I'm very pleased to see the impressive spirit of collaboration which animates all your forums and endeavors. And I invite all of us gathered here, as well as the wider communities we are all part of, to strengthen our commitment, ramp up our efforts, and work together cohesively to continuously strive for creative ways to better prepare our graduates of the future through practice, applied research, and supporting strategies. I wish to close by now sincerely expressing my deepest appreciation to our honorable keynote speakers for their generous contribution to our Global Forum series and their innovative, thought-provoking talk. Over the past few months, we have explored a number of important themes and topics that have broadened our minds about the meaning of graduate readiness, including regional employability strategies in the UK and the Asia-Pacific region, the practice and applied research of embedding career development learning, holistic competencies, and exploration of new possible cells within the curriculum, as well as the importance of helping our students to face the career concern of feeling lost through strengthened-based career counseling. Altogether, these insights and innovations have reminded us that the role of higher education institutions goes beyond preparing discipline-specific, job-ready graduates. We wish to nurture students to become fluid, resilient, and adaptable, and to have the ability to recognize, internalize, and connect with their own personal achievements, assets, and intrinsic characteristics that help them navigate and embrace life's challenges to find success in the future. Your ideas, insights, and expertise have certainly helped to frame our discussions, guide our course of action, and shape the narrative of maintaining a global vision and forging solidarity. I would also like to thank you all, the participants, who come from different parts of the world, for your time and interest in our forums. Without your great support, the forum series simply would not have been possible. I hope that our Global Forum series has given you an invigorating, inspirational, and fruitful experience, and an opportunity to build professional networks and create collaborative relationships. My deepest thanks, of course, reserved for all who have helped to make our Global Forum series such a successful event. The organizing committee and the members of Employability Interest Group at LeePace, you have worked diligently, tirelessly, and professionally to make this collaborative Global Forum series a fruitful event. Your teamwork, curiosity, willingness, and generosity of spirit to try and innovate deserve our praise. Finally, my deepest appreciation also goes to our co-organizer, Nottingham Trent University, especially the Trent Institute for Learning and Teaching, supporting learning for employability, practice, and scholarship group, for your sharing of expertise, innovation, vision, and passion. We are honored to have the opportunity to work closely with you in this Global Forum series, and we are looking forward to further intensifying our collaboration in the future. I will now officially close this collaborative Global Forum series. On behalf of Hong Kong Metropolitan University, thank you all again for joining our collaborative Global Forum series and for your dedication, enthusiastic support, and contribution to the event. We look forward to seeing you all again at our future events. Goodbye and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.